On this episode of Biggest Guy Now, we currently discuss a recent Sacramento State player making his mark on the NFL. We also talk about Week 8, where we saw only 4 conference games inside the Big Sky. Then we jump to Week 9, where all the teams are back in action and destined for some good matchups. Before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's not waste any time and get right to it. All right, welcome back, everyone. My name is Luke Schmit, and I am your host of the Big Sky Now podcast. Today, I am joined by Daily Interlake sports reporter John Allen, Coeur d'Alene Press sports editor Mark Nelke, and also joined by Columbia Basin Herald sports reporter Mike Maynard. We are missing Fritz today, so we'll have him back next week. But thankfully, I was able to attend the Montana game, so I will be able to fill in for Fritz on that. Guys, before we jump into Week 8, kind of went over my head the last couple of weeks, but I definitely wanted to give a big shout out to Sacramento State's own Cam Scatabo. Cam has been killing it right now for the Giants. He's been playing exceptionally well. Currently, he's tied for 4th in the NFL for rushing touchdowns and top 20 in yards. He has 398 yards. If you didn't know, when Cam was at Sacramento State, he was first-team All-Conference in 2022 and was the Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year. So I thought it's really cool to see him making his mark in the NFL. We'll see how many years he lasts in the NFL because Cam likes to put his head down and play as a strong player. I'll put it in a nice way, but just wanted to give a shout out there on Sunday. Let's jump right into it, guys. Week 8, we're going to have a little bit of a short recap since there's only 4 games. We'll start with the game that I attended Saturday. Montana did defeat Sacred Heart, even though there was a late fourth quarter scare where there was a 1-possession game. Before I give my rundown, I'll let John jump in here. John, what were your quick thoughts on the Montana victory?
Yeah, I love the offensive play. I mean, Keely, showed you got some recognition on college football final on ESPN, and so the defense maybe a little bit to work on still, of course. But Sacred Heart's not a slouch of a team either. They're only. I think they've got 3 losses and 2 of them are to current unbeatens with Montana and Lehigh. So, yeah, it's they're definitely not Big Sky level, but it's not a slouch of a win for a non-conference game, especially when teams are figuring out who they are at this point in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I was impressed with Sacred Heart. To be honest, Montana came out at the gate early, jumped to a 20-plus lead in the first quarter, and it was starting to look like maybe there's going to be some backups played, but got to give Sacred Heart a lot of respect. They kept their heads down, stayed in the game. Their quarterback, Jack Snyder, I was impressed with his play. 20 for 26 attempts, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. And Mitchell Summers, their running back, he was also impressive, had 87 yards and a touchdown. So definitely got to give the Pioneers some respect because personally, after the first quarter, I didn't know if it was going to be too close. But Ayat has a career day. 5 passing touchdowns, his most ever, more in the maroon and silver. And they did hold Eli Gilman to 63 yards. So I thought that was definitely a key of the game. If Sacred Heart was going to keep it close, they did shut down the rushing lanes. But Michael Wortham, the transfer from Eastern Washington, continues to save the day as he had 2 touchdowns, 132 yards. And overall, I thought it was another good victory for Montana. Getting it done, in a hard way. It's hard to win some games, maybe when the momentum's shifting, but in the end, they were able to take some deep shots and escape with the victory. Let's jump to the next game. I know we have 2 guys that are maybe one's excited to talk about, the other one's not, because I know Mark's the Idaho guy here. But let's start with you, Mike. Eagles get a huge win over Idaho. Idaho didn't have Joshua Wood again. But what did you take from this win? And they're starting 2-1 in the Big Sky for the Eagles. So I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Eagles are definitely kind of capturing some momentum at the right time, early enough in league play, starting with that win over Portland State. And it looks like the defense really had a big day, getting some key stops throughout the game. And one thing that I was really impressed with is that the Eagles are starting to pass more. Nate Bell threw for 31 times, 18 for 31. That's about 58 completion percentage. Probably would like to see that a little bit higher, but nevertheless, for 77 yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. Feels like there's a gradual improvement there. And if you pair that with how well their run game has been going, I think it makes the Eagles a dangerous team. And I won't quite call them a sleeper team just yet. But yes, 2-1 in the conference is a really good position to be in, and not one that maybe a couple weeks ago I was expecting them to be in. So I think it'll be important for them to kind of continue to ride this momentum and not allow that to be disrupted. But I think they also benefited from some of Idaho's struggles with the quarterback situation. And playing multiple quarterbacks throughout that game is it's a tough thing to manage on their end. So they may not win the conference. I'm still not sold on that at all, but I think they could definitely disrupt a lot of teams' seasons.
Yeah, Eastern, it definitely isn't a team I think are to tread lightly after their recent play in the Big Sky. Mark, Idaho's 4th loss in a row. Like I said, Wood was out, so that's going to be a game changer. But as we discussed before the show, maybe their defense has taken a step back, even though they did have one returner from last year. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was fortunate I got to cover the game. Cheney's actually closer to our office than Moscow is, if you can imagine that. So it's kind of an easy drive over there. First of all, I think everybody just kind of assumed Idaho would reload. They've done that the past couple of years, but with the graduation in the portal, they kind of got left a little young on defense. They only had one returning starter, and I think that's starting to show right now. Offensively, I mean, you don't miss guy, you don't realize sometimes how good your receivers are till you don't have them anymore. And 2 years ago, Idaho had Patton and Jermaine Jackson, and last year they had Jordan Dwyer and Mark Hamper. And not to knock these guys, but maybe they're not quite to that level yet. So getting open is a little bit harder, and that makes it a little tougher. Jack Wagner was a little more effective last year, maybe because of that. He could just kind of throw it up to Dwyer and Hamper, or throw bubble screens to Hamper, and he can make things happen. And it's a little harder for them to pass the ball this year. And then you throw in, Josh Wood not being able to play. I mean, that's probably why they brought him in, because they kind of needed somebody that could make plays with their feet as a quarterback as well as their arm. And then without him, they didn't really have either. They had Wagner's more of a pocket passer, and Eastern actually put some pretty good pressure on him. Rocco Koch's a runner mostly. He was like 0 for 6 passing. They finally put Nick Josephek in there, and he had some pretty good success passing, but they're also Eastern's up 2 scores, and so you know how they're playing defense on that, maybe being a little more prevent and stuff like that. But anyway, that's kind of I don't think people thought Idaho was just going to make the playoffs again, and now I think they might have to win out to make the playoffs, and even at that would put them 7-5 and 5-3. So they have no margin for error anymore.
You're right, Mark. I think that they're going to have to win out, especially falling out of the top 25. It's going to be an uphill battle. But, as I would say, Joshua Wood is a quarterback that if he can get healthy, I could see it happening. But, yeah, right now the vibes for Moscow and the Vandals just aren't too great. And, got to give Eastern a shout out getting back, at the beginning of the season. Wasn't too sure if they'd maybe be at the bottom of the Big Sky, but they're 2-1 after 3 weeks. So got to give respect when it's due. Let's jump to the next game, guys. Came down to the wire. Northern Colorado decides to throw the ball on the 3-yard line when they only had 1 yard to go. John, I hopefully didn't give you any PTSD from the Super Bowl with the Seahawks, because I know you're a Seattle fan. What did you take in the decision right there?
Yeah, the first thing that went through my head was Pete Carroll calling this game. As much as you want to look at that last possession and see what they could do differently, especially on a 4th and 1. When the running game's been working on that drive, you have to look back at that game and you see 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions from Gibson early on in the game, and just mistakes that cost Northern Colorado earlier, that it shouldn't have come down to them needing a review to go their way and a 4th and 1 to go their way down at the 3-yard line. So it's definitely, it hurts worse when you lose that way. Believe me, I've experienced it as a fan before, but when you look back and see all the mistakes that happened to the team early on, you kind of maybe take it with a grain of salt of that cost us the game, instead of, if you play better for the first quarter where you didn't score any points at all and found yourself trailing 10-0, Northern Colorado maybe is in a better position. So as for the other side, Sacramento State, like Mike said last week, run the dang ball. They had 323 yards on the ground, only 111 through the air from what I saw. So I think they've figured out what their offensive identity is, and we'll see how they can keep that going as they move into next week with Montana.
Yes, and we definitely have some discuss on that game. Rodney Hammond, shout out to Sacramento State running back, 134 yards, was definitely the difference in this one. The Bears scored 21 points in the second quarter. I don't think we've seen a Northern offense, maybe even some games last year, put up 21 points total. So I'm still impressed with them, but they seem to be not finding ways to win. They've had a lot of games come down to the wire, and they're losing some close score games. But, it is great to see Northern Colorado back in the hunt in these games and not just a team that gets walked over. Our last game of the week, we'll touch on pretty briefly. John, Weber State won its first conference game on Saturday with their victory over Portland State. What stood out to you in this one? And what stood out to me is I don't think we'll see Portland State win a game this year.
What stood out to me is kind of what we touched on last week in the preview, just which quarterback would make the fewest mistakes. And Sagapolutele throws 3 interceptions, gets pulled, 5 total turnovers for Portland State, and Weber State was able to capitalize on it. So.
Absolutely. Hey, Mark, I'll let you wrap up week 8. Any final thoughts on any of these matchups before we go forward?
I would just give a shout out to Eastern. I mean, they've been kicked around for the last 3 years, and they stepped up defensively. They put pressure on Wagner. I mean, it made it a little easier knowing they were mostly going to run, but still, we've seen Eastern's defense the last 3 years. They couldn't stop anybody. So kudos to them. And it was funny to be in the press conferences afterward and see how excited Coach Aaron Best was. I mean, this was, I think this meant something to him. This was not just a conference win. This was a win over Idaho, and whether he wanted to admit it or not publicly, he was he was pretty stoked. So good for him.
Good for Coach. And yeah, shout out to the Eagles. They get a gold star this week from me. I think they're a team that, like I said earlier, not a lot of teams definitely want to go on that red turf and play, and they're not someone that's gonna be walked over. But we'll see if they can keep it up. Currently 2-1 in the Big Sky. Okay, we're going to jump right into week 9. All the teams are back in action this Saturday after multiple bye weeks. Let's start with our game Friday night. Already some smack talk coming around from Sacramento State. If you didn't see, their president made some comments calling the Montana Pandas are coming to town, and basically did some disrespectful commentary up in the booth. And Coach Howe called him a clown today in the press conference. So there's already going to be some chippiness to this one Friday. John, what were your thoughts on those comments, and give me what you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it's bold for certain. Sacramento State's not having the best season, so maybe trying to light a little fire under the team. I don't know how much you want that outside of your coaching staff, trying to light a fire under the players, but he's not been short of words in the past. We've seen it. He's constantly been talking with the FBS move, so it doesn't surprise me too much. I do think it gives Montana a little more ammunition, as if they needed any more for a national TV game on a Friday night. So it's going to be one, though, for Montana where they have to figure out who they really are. They've played one road game so far this year, and they didn't exactly pass with flying colors against Idaho State. So can they come out? Can they establish Eli Gilman early on? Can they stop Sacramento State's running game, which has found itself in the past 2 weeks? And just how will they react to playing in a fairly hostile environment?
Definitely going to be a good test for Montana, as they're still undefeated. I think this is one of their hardest games on the schedule until they play Montana State. So I expect them to come in prepared. Hopefully they can play 2 halves of football. I don't know if they're going to be able to win this one as a nationally televised game on the road at night if they're playing how they've been. Last week in the first half, they played great. Second half, they collapsed until maybe the end of the fourth quarter. We've seen earlier in the season where first half they don't come out good at all, and then in the second half they take over control versus Cal Poly, for example. So I think they're going to need two halves of decent football. I don't think they need to play amazing to beat this team, but I think they need to have two halves of good football. Jumping to our next game, Mike, we'll go back to you. Eastern travels to Weber State this week. Let's hear what you got on this one after the Eagles' momentum going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I just kind of harp on the passing once again. I think I forgot to mention. I think that's the third time all season that Nate Bell has passed over 25 times. And so, I think the repetition of doing something like that, I think they're only going to continue to improve as long as he plays smart and they call the right plays and offensive line does their job. So I think they need to do that, but also obviously their run game is their strong suit. So maybe be creative when it comes to playing at Weber State. They might be intending to shut that down and make them one dimensional. So kind of being creative in that sense and being prepared for them to try to take that away is important. And then Weber State take away their pass game, I think will help them in the long run to aiding them to victory. So run game is good, but not the most consistent it seems like. So they can just take that away. That'll be good. But I'll reiterate, ride this momentum and do whatever you can to not allow Weber State to take that from you.
Yeah, I think this is a huge game for Nate Bell to continue his growth as we've seen on the road at Weber. Obviously, Weber is not one of the top teams, in my opinion, this year on the Big Sky. But if Eastern can get this win again and go to 3-1, we're going to be talking next week even more seriously about what team matchups they have going forward. And, can they slide into the top 25 maybe by the end of the season if they win out? So this is a stepping stone game for the Eagles. Mark, let's go over to Idaho. They should be able to bounce back this week. They play winless Portland State. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, you hope. I mean, if they don't, there's like we talked about, their season's over. So maybe Wood is back this week. We don't know. He warmed up last week. We were watching him down on the turf going through the warm-ups and stuff like that. And then when it came time to play, Wagner was out there, and they told us afterwards that Wood was not cleared to play, even though the pregame report said he was, I think it said questionable or something like that. Or anyway, it kind of looked like he could have played, but obviously he was ruled out. So anyway, and they might not have Jack Wagner either. He suffered a lower leg injury in the first half last week, and that's why he didn't play in the second half. That's why he went more Rocco Cope and then the Nick Joseph X. So they could be down to their third quarterback this week. They've had a hard time moving the ball, but playing Portland State might be the thing that solves their issues and stuff like that and makes them feel a little bit better now. So they might be able to win anyway, despite all the problems they have moving the ball and with the quarterback situation.
Yeah, and for the Vandals, this might be a perfect week to get faced against Portland State. It looks like they need to get healthy, find the momentum again to get back in the 25, win out potentially so they can get back in the playoffs. I expect this one to be a bounce-back game for the Vandals. We'll talk about our picks here soon. I do have Fritz picks today, even though he's not here, so I'll make sure to mention that as well. Let's jump to the next game. I think this game is going to be another close game for the Bears as they face UC Davis, traveling to Greeley, Colorado. John, let's go to you first. Do you think this one could actually be close? I know UC Davis is going to be heavily favored, but I don't think the Bears are a team to be reckoned with, especially at home.
No, I do think Northern Colorado definitely has the ability to keep this one close. That being back in Greeley is going to help them. They've had two good performances on the road that they can build off of now. I do kind of expect Davis to take care of business, especially with how Caden Penix played this year. Pass-heavy teams have kind of been Northern Colorado's weakness. When you look at games that they've lost, they've given up a large number of passing yards, whereas in games where they've given up maybe some more rushing yards, like last weekend against South Dakota, they've held in strong. So I think it's going to be about whether or not Eric Gibson can take advantage of a not 100% Aggies defense and keep Northern Colorado's offense keeping up with Caden Penix and the Aggies.
Mike, how about you? What do you think about Caden Penix? Could be Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, traveling to Northern Colorado. Definitely a better team than we've seen in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, he's playing really well. That was something I was looking at earlier, but also at the same time, their run game is also working really well. They have a really nice balanced offense with his ability to pass like that, and then two running backs averaging over 7 yards a carry. I mean, they're going to be really hard to stop. And so I lean towards UC Davis on this one for sure, but they have shown even in their wins that teams can score on them. I mean, they're winning. They Southern Utah put 34 on them, even though they won. Cal Poly 27. So Northern Colorado certainly has a chance to keep this close. I agree with John there. So, but I think I lean towards UC Davis to kind of take it.
Definitely understandable. Want to also give a shout out to Northern Colorado's quarterback Eric Gibson Jr. Currently has 1,700 passing yards, 65% completion rate. He's thrown for, I think he had one game that he's thrown less than 320 yards, and that's just not something we haven't seen. So, I think if it gets into a shootout, Northern Colorado most likely will lose to Pinnock, but I still think they have a weapon or two that can keep this game close. Let's jump to two teams that had a bye last week. Northern Arizona traveling to Idaho State. Mark, where you stand on this matchup?
I'd give Idaho State a slight edge, mostly because they're playing at home. Either way, it should be a terrific quarterback matchup with Ty Pennington of Northern Arizona and Jordan Cook of Idaho State. It's a good thing the game starts at 4 Mountain. Otherwise, that game could go on till after midnight and stuff like that. So this is also kind of one of those games we talked about Idaho State trying to make that next step up. This is kind of one of those games where they need to win this to prove they belong, but it's also a game that Northern Arizona is good enough to come into Pocatello and win. But Northern Arizona's coming off a bye too, so we'll see have the rest versus rust argument there. So should be an interesting one in Pokey.
It should be an interesting one. I could see this one being the closest game of the week potentially. Anything can happen in Pokey. We've talked about it since the start of this podcast this year, and Northern Arizona hasn't lived up to the expectations that I've thought they would this year. Obviously, they still have a chance to turn their season around and get higher in the standings in the Big Sky, but traveling to Idaho State isn't easy, and this one might be a tough one for the Lumberjacks. I'm excited to kind of pay attention to this matchup. We got our last game. I'm going to let John talk about this one. The Bobcats travel down to Cal Poly this week. John, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, Cal Poly's definitely been on the rise this year. We saw they came out in the first half defensively against Montana and held them scoreless. So, the quarterback position's kind of been not a revolving door, but they've had a couple of guys who've gone in and out there with injuries and whatnot. So they're definitely a solid team. They're on the rise from what they have been the past couple of years. But Montana State at this point is playing like the conference champion we kind of expected them to be at the beginning of the season. The running game is going at full force now. Justin Lamson's established himself as a great quarterback. So they're no shortage on the offense for Montana State, and then the defense, of course, is going to be good out in Bozeman. So we'll see if Cal Poly can keep it close. They need to have a good start. If you fall behind with this Montana State team, you are not going to be in a good position.
Definitely not the way Montana State's been looking each week, getting better. Lamson being able to be more efficient. Adam Jones being able to run through the trenches. If they're able to milk the time, get up a couple scores, I think this one could be ugly. But like you said, if Cal Poly can come out quick, I don't know which quarterback we'll see, if it's Bo Kelly or not. They're going to have to come out ready out of the gate, and thankfully they are at home. So, that really could happen. Let's get to our picks, guys, of the week. I'll start with you, John. You're still our leader. Just want to say that, but you came down to earth just a little bit. 1 for 4 last week. But you're still winning. You got 1 game over Fritz. You are 54 out of 62. Let's hear what picks you have.
Yeah, I'm glad a lot of teams were on buys last week because I couldn't do quite, as bad as it could have been. But we'll see how bad it goes this week now. I'm going to take Montana on the road at Sacramento State. I feel like that little extra ammunition is going to push them over the edge, and they'll be able to get the road win. I think Eastern's going to move to 3-1. I think they'll beat Weber State. Idaho, I have finally getting a rebound win. Portland State's coming at the right time for them now. I'm going to pick UC Davis on the road. I do think that Caden Pinnock will lead them in Greeley. I've got NAU winning in a shootout over Idaho State. This one's kind of 50-50, like you guys mentioned earlier. But I definitely could see this one being a very high scoring affair with the offenses. And then I've got the Bobcats.
Obviously, Fritz isn't here today, but he did send me his picks. He's one game back of John, 53 out of 62. So we're getting real tight here at the top. As long as we'll talk about it soon, Mark is as well joining them. He's got Montana over Sac State. Fritz has UC Davis to win on the road over Northern Colorado. He has Weber State beating Eastern Washington, which is surprising to me, but Fritz is up higher than I am for a reason. Idaho to defeat Portland State. And Fritz's Bengals, he told me that in the text to make sure I knew that it's his Bengals to take down Northern Arizona. And finally, he has the Bobcats over Cal Poly. Okay, Mark, right now you are creeping up on these guys. Let's see, 50 out of 62. So only a few games back from the lead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the Idaho Eastern game didn't help me. So, but obviously the other ones did. Well, there's some tough ones this week. I mean, I went back and forth on Montana, Sac State. I thought, okay, Sac State is home. Chance for the future FBS power to win on national television. But I'm kind of like what John said. Their guy lapping his gums and stuff like that might have fired Montana up more than it did Sac State. So I'll take Montana in that one. I was gonna take Weber to beat Eastern, but I'm gonna go with the Eags to go into Ogden and pull that one out. I was impressed with Eastern. They I mean, Bell threw a lot, but a lot of his throws were about from me to you. You know, they were just little bubble screens, little short outs and stuff like that. And then he threw a couple deep, and it's weird how he was able to run so well. It's almost like it was they were designed runs where he looked like he was going back to pass and just kind of waited for everybody to spread out, and then he just kind of jitterbugged up the middle and into some big gains. So he had over 100 yards on the ground. So I'm gonna go with the Eags. I know that pick went really well the last time I picked them in Bozeman, and so they owe me one. So I'm gonna go with Idaho to beat Portland State. It might be a single digit game, might be 9-6 or something like that. But I think the Vandals will find a way. I'm gonna take Fritz's Idaho State Bengals to win a shootout over Northern Arizona, and then I'm going to take I'm not going to take Cal Poly. I'm going to take Montana State to win fairly handily at Cal Poly.
Keeping us on the edge of our seats, Mark. We love it. Mike, you did the best this week, so I have to give you your props. You are now ahead of me. I've officially entered last place, unfortunately for myself, but congratulations to you. You're no longer at the bottom with me. Hopefully I can get back here soon now that we have a lot less buys. Let's hear what you got.
Yeah, I think I'd like to mention with Sacramento State, this one's kind of a tougher decision for me. They are 4-1 in the last 5 games, so this team is hot, and so it doesn't surprise me they're talking a little smack. But that's the kind of comments, if they go in and lose, they're going to look really dumb. But I do think I have Montana winning in a close one. They've just been the more impressive team all year long, even with whatever their flaws may be. I think this team's going to come out in a close one, even on the road. Then I got UC Davis over Northern Colorado. I'm going to pick Eastern Washington to stay hot and get another win. I'm going to go Idaho over Portland State. I could see the Vikings maybe giving them a little bit of a scare, but I think Idaho will pull it out. Northern Arizona over Fritz's Bengals. And then Montana State over Cal Poly.
Perfect. I will get my picks in here. Friday night, I'm going to take the Montana Pandas to defeat NIL Superhouse Sacramento State. I like Eastern Washington, just like you guys, to find a way to win over Weber. I'm going to go with UC Davis in my pick over Northern Colorado. That one I actually did think about taking Northern on the upset, but I'm in last place. I got to go with the percentages here, trying to get my way back. I do see Idaho picking up its first conference win this week versus Portland State. I'm going to take Fritz's Bengals as well. Anything can happen in Pocatello. I think anything happens, and Northern Arizona is defeated. And lastly, give me the Bobcats to defeat Cal Poly. Nothing I could find for me to take Cal Poly seriously to beat them in this game. You know, anything can happen on any given Saturday, but give me the Cats. that is going to do it for this episode of Big Sky Now. I just want to thank my panel for joining me here on this Monday. Look forward to speaking with you guys next week. If you have any comments, please drop them below. Would love to discuss it on the podcast. Like, subscribe, share the video with your friends, family. We'd love to engage. But for now, have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.